Hey, what's up, everybody? It's me, Sarah G with the Smack, and I am back. And today I have Brian Williams of Northshire Consulting. Hey, Brian.
Hey, what's happening, Sarah? Good to see you again.
Amen. We're going to be talking about why 401k plans suck and what financial advisors can and should be doing to help 401k participants. Woohoo!
That's
Let's get
right.
started.
Yeah.
Brian,
Yes, I like you bringing the energy here. It's good stuff.
why do 401k plans all suck?
Well, I don't know if they all suck, but a good majority of them do. And one of the main reasons that they suck is because they don't exist. So a lot of small businesses don't have any sort of retirement plan. So that would be one of the first things that should be tackled is to get all these small business retirement plans. So you can get into the weeds on a lot of stuff, and I'm sure we will, but none of that stuff really factors unless the business owner is willing to take some initiative and do the right thing for their employees. I mean, there's about 40% of workers don't even have access to one to begin with. So that would be a good place to start.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So this is like blows my mind. Like, why is a small business owner not offering a 401k plan?
Well, I think for mostly what I run into is it's not a priority. It's somewhere on the list. It's something they want to do. But I mean, if you think about all that goes into starting a small business and starting any kind of business and everything that's involved in that, I mean, it's tough. It's hard, So you think of the local 5 or 6 person bakery, and they've got some people, working maybe anywhere from 10 to 40 hours a week, and they've got turnover and they're doing all that kind of stuff. I mean, establishing a retirement plan for your employees is pretty far down on the priority list. So I think that's probably the main facet of it. I mean, there's a lot of myths out there too that I think if the idea that they're too expensive or too complicated or we're too small to have a 401k plan. You still get a lot of that, even though I don't think that's factually accurate anymore. You still will hear a lot of that out there, but I just think it's a low priority, and people are still thinking it's a long time ago and that they're too complex and too expensive to have.
Imagine what a different country this would be if the bakery worker had a 401k plan.
Yeah, I mean, I think workers like them. I think that's a competitive advantage for small businesses to have them. And I know there's a lot of turnover and a lot of part-time employees, and it's not the traditional workforce anymore where people work 40 hours at one job for 40 years and then they're done. I mean, people are bouncing around between a couple part-time jobs or gig economies or side hustles or whatever you want to call it. So, um, I've had business owners say, yeah, you know what, I guess we should start a 401k plan. We should start a retirement plan, but I don't think anybody here is going to do it because of, these reasons. And then they go and start the retirement plan, and participation is way higher than they expected just because they didn't maybe know their employee base as well as they thought they did.
We are talking about the American middle class here.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, and it's not even sometimes just lower income workers or middle income workers. I mean, you might have some business owners who, you might have 2 or 3 partners that make a lot of money and they're just reinvesting in their business. So they don't have a retirement plan. You run into that sometimes too, where they say, yeah, maybe I can get 10, 12% in the market. But if I just plow all my money back into growing the business, then I can grow it faster that way. So you do run into that too. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's just access and making it available to workers. I think it's better to have a retirement plan in place. And even if 1 or 2 workers take advantage of it, well, that's better than zero. So, I mean, I think it makes sense for most businesses to try to put some type of plan together.
All of you know by now I have 4 children. I have them with Antonio. Okay. Antonio is the background he is from within his family, his friends, the kind of place where he's from. Financial literacy is very low, but he was able to actually do okay financially because he had okay paying jobs. But there was something that happened to him. He had a job at a large retail store. I don't want to say which one it was just to honor his privacy, but he had a job at a large retail department store, and he was a suit salesman. And I'm not trying to brag or anything, but he was like a top booker. Like, he was doing really well. And they had a pension. And so he was there for, I think, 10 years. And he didn't even know what a pension was. Like, I'm not trying to insult Antonio or anything, but he didn't even really understand what was happening. He's just like, yeah, they took some money out and they're taking money out, and I'm like, that's a pension, Antonio. And we looked at it and it was like between that and his social security, like, thanks be to God, like he's okay. And he didn't know about the 401k or like asset allocation. He wasn't reading Nerd Wallet. It was something that, and I just tell this story because I feel like it's an example of how, if these systems were set up to accommodate the American middle class, that it could make a major difference in their lives. Because I mean, okay, so he had another one, a 401k, and the 401k didn't do as well because I remember he was coming home and he had all these questions and he's like, babe, like, what do I put this money in? I don't know. Should I even be doing this? And they're making me do it. And I'd explained to him about, like, no, there's a match, etc. And it was not as automatic. So I just want to pause here, Brian, because it's so important societally that these mechanisms are in place, not just to whatever people want to say, like shield the rich from taxes or offer the rich opportunities to get richer, but to actually help those people that maybe aren't in the teacher's pension system or aren't the high earners. What about the rest of them? What about those people? And I feel like if if it became a thing more, then it would itself increase financial literacy. Just
Yeah, absolutely.
because,
Yeah, I mean, and now you touched on a lot of points with me that get me fired up like we did
right.
before. But so one important point about the financial literacy and how it ties back to workplace retirement plans is this is the only mechanism where a lot of Americans can get some financial literacy or some help on this kind of stuff. Because you and I meet a ton of planners and they run great businesses and they do great financial plans for 8, 10, $12,000 a year. Well, half the country doesn't even have more than $2,000 in their savings account. The idea that they're going to go out and hire a $10,000 planner is ludicrous. So there has to be a mechanism to get financial wellness and some literacy to these people. And I believe that the workplace is probably one of the best ways to do that, because it's the one to many model. If I spent all day sitting with one person and talking about, putting away $10 a week in their Roth IRA, that would be helpful to the individual, but it's not business. The business isn't there. It's not no way to run a business there. But if you get 50 employees in a room and I can have that same conversation with 50 people all at once, and all of them are doing $10 or $15 a week, now you've got something that works for the employees, works for the employer, is an effective business model, and everybody wins in that scenario. The idea that those 50 people can go out and hire a financial planner for $10,000 a year is crazy. We hope they get to the point where they can, and we hope that they find the services that they need. But initially, just that first part about getting going, delivering financial wellness through the workplace is probably one of the most effective ways to deliver it.
Well, I think it comes down to having that conversation with the business owner. Because I feel like a lot of financial advisors aren't doing it right. A lot of them will say to me, hey, I want to sell, I want to get into these companies. So I went and I looked up what the fees were on these 401k plans, and I'm going to go talk to the business owner. It's like, no, that's not the conversation. The conversation should be this: business owner, do you care about your employees? Yes. Do you want them to stay with you a long time? Yes. Do you think it would be the best thing for your business if Sheila, who answers the phone and that all your clients know by name, you're the trucking company, Sheila did the dispatcher, if Sheila's there in 5 months, wouldn't that be the best thing for those truckers? Yes. How about 5 years? Yes. Okay. Does Sheila have a family? Yeah, she's got 2 young kids. Well, what are you doing for that? Does she know about 529 plans? No, I don't know. Never. Does she know about a 401k? I don't know. I've never had a conversation with her. So it's about having the employer want to participate in the financial wellness of their employees.
Right.
That would be right. That would be the conversation,
Sure.
not about the typical financial advisor pitch, which is what y'all are going in there on, which is your funds stink, your expense ratios stink. That's not it. Get them to care more about their people, or show them ways that they're not caring as much about their people as they possibly could. Do you agree?
I agree. Yeah. And to the most part, you're right there. A lot of business owners don't care about their employees, unfortunately. So I do run into that sometimes. So one of the first questions I'll ask of employers, I'll say, who is this plan for? Is this for for you and your family so you can put away as much money as possible, or are you really trying to do something for all of your employees? And I tell them I just want an honest answer, and they'll give me one usually. And some will say, you know what, we have so much turnover here, and most of my employees aren't even focused on their job, and I'm really just want to do the right thing for myself and my family. And I say, okay, that's okay. There's no wrong answer to this question. And then you'll get the business owners who are on the other end of the spectrum who say, well, I know that 401ks are a lot more efficient than they used to be, and I want to do this for my employees. So you do get all across the spectrum there. And the traditional pitch from advisors is, fees, funds, and fiduciary. When was the last time you had meetings? What are your planned fees? Do you, all that kind of stuff that you mentioned. And it's tough because you don't know when you're just looking at a business's website or looking at their 5,500. You don't know, anything about that business owner and what their intentions are. So I think asking the business owner up front who the plan is for, that can cut through a lot of the noise and get you to where you need to be.
That's a great way to question. That's a great way to phrase it because it's non-confrontational. The way
Right.
I said it would have been a little bit confrontational. So I like that, Brian. But
Yeah.
what about that? What about having a rebuttal back though? When the person says, if you say, who's this plan for? They say what you said, which is there's a lot of turnover here. People aren't really into their jobs. It's just a paycheck to them. Well, like, why can't
Yeah.
you then inspire and motivate and say, okay, so you want to do the right thing for your family, right? Yes. Do you think that that's the best thing for your family then? To have it be so happenstance that you could have somebody come in and blow up your business and take all your trade secrets and take all your clients or create a negative reputation because they just don't care because they've got to run to daycare because they're so pressed for money that they can't get charged the over fee if they're 5 minutes late to pick up their kid. Do you really want that kind of a culture? Do you think that's the best thing? Because the risks to your business that are imminent are so large of you not having that connection, that they're not connected to you, they're not on the mission of the company. What can you have that conversation with them?
Right. Yeah, usually when they say that the retirement plan is more for them and not so much about the employees, then I know to approach it from a business aspect and say, okay, well, think about how expensive employee turnover is, right? Think about how hard it is to find good employees. And I'm not saying an employee is going to stay at a bad job just because their 401k is good. I mean, that's ridiculous. But all of that stuff from the employer starts to build that trust with the employees. So they say, wow, this employer does care about me. This benefit package is good. I'm more likely to stay here. This is a long-term place for me. So if you can get to the employer and approach it from a business standpoint of saying, listen, how expensive is employee turnover and how hard is it to find new employees? And then on top of that, how much time do your employees spend thinking about money issues? Aside from health issues, money's the next biggest stressor. So if you can have that addressed in the workplace and have your employee base more financially literate, have access, give them the access to the professionals that they need so that they're not stressed about it. What are they going to do more? They're going to do more work. They're going to be more focused. They're going to be more productive. So that's the business angle of trying to help your employees. So that's kind of the conversation to the employer who's laser focused on the bottom line and says, well, I don't really care about the employees. Then you have to bring it back and say, well, here's how it affects your bottom line.
I think it's a lot harder for people to leave. I think it's a lot harder for people to put in half effort. I think it's a lot harder for people to even look for another job because they feel like they're cheating on their boss. If, especially at a small business, if the business owner cares about them.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, 100%.
I think it's just, as business owners, financial advisors are all kind of business owners. Even if you don't own the parent company, you're still a business owner.
Sure.
And in a sense, right? And there's this like kind of beautiful thing. I think this bond we all have kind of in common of that first, like when you think about that first time that somebody ever said yes to you,
Mm.
it's that beautiful spirit of entrepreneurship. And I would just encourage any financial advisor who's going out there talking to business owners, bring that spirit and that energy.
Yeah. And I would say advisors who want to work with small businesses, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. So I get a lot of advisors who reach out to me and say, well, I'm thinking about going into the 401k world. And I'll kind of ask them about it. And they'll say, yeah, because I really want to get to those business owners because they've got the large assets. And I think running the 401k will be a backdoor to run the business owner's assets. And, that kind of gives me a shoulder shrug because I'm like, okay, you'll be there and you'll be successful and you can do the 401k work, but you really have to have a passion for working with all the employees because if you're if you're laser focused on just going in and going to the corner office and meeting the people with money, and you don't care about the, Tony, the secretary who's out front, putting away $20, you're not, that's not going to be a win for anybody. Yeah, you might get the assets of the business owner, but you're not doing the right thing for that business, and you're providing uneven benefits to the employees, and it's just not a good scenario. So those advisors who've built their whole practice on that, and that's fine. But I think you really have to have a passion to help all of the employees in the workforce, or it's not going to be as rewarding for you.
Okay, Brian. So you have this conversation about who is it for, which is a great way to phrase it. And then what do you do after that?
Well, it depends. If it's an existing plan, then we can kind of get into the weeds. Then it becomes the fees, funds, and the fiduciary. What is the service model like? Sometimes the business owner has the majority of the money in the plan. That's not uncommon. So the fees do matter there. If they're paying, an extra 1% inside of their plan that maybe they don't need to, maybe there's a way to modernize that. Um, One avenue where I think advisors miss a lot of the opportunities is um, some of the work that goes into uploading payroll and all that kind of stuff. So you don't want to spend too much of it doesn't want to you don't want to have it be a huge manual process, a labor issue for the employer. Every week they're downloading from payroll, uploading the 401k system. So hopefully you can streamline that. And then it's about, investment performance factors in there, the record keeper, all that super kind of nerdy stuff. But you can go there if that's what the business owner is looking for. If it's, the majority of their money. If they're more focused on the employees, then we start to have those conversations about, what is the advisor doing for the rest of your staff, and what does that program look like?
How do you get the business owners to meet with you, Brian?
Well, that's probably the biggest challenge in the industry. I mean, you do a number of different things. I mean, it's usually referrals. I mean, it can be referrals from their CPAs. That's a trusted partner there. I mean, emails, some of them will get through, but that gets harder and harder, month by month, bigger spam filters and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you can send some, hard mail. I know some advisors have had some luck with that. It's the whole, big envelope philosophy. But I think it's just kind of being out in the community. I think it's doing a good job with business owners, because business owners, they're going to spend a lot of time around other business owners. You can go to business associations and go that route too. But it's a challenge, because business owners, especially if they're startup people, they're focused on running their business. They're not necessarily focused on the benefits and the ancillary stuff. They're just really trying to, if they're making widgets, it's like, how can we make more widgets faster and cheaper? That's what they're focused on. The other stuff, it's really kind of hard to get in there.
But the people are the business.
Yeah, they are. People are the business. And, some states now have mandates where you have to have a retirement plan if you have, it could be 5 or more employees. Some states it's down to 1 as soon as you hire your first employee. So that can kind of help. That's been offset a little bit by the state IRA programs, which are not very good, which we could talk a lot about. But so some states that have the mandates, I mean, I think that's a good thing. We wish we didn't have to have mandates. The business owners would do it on their own, but it just doesn't happen. So sometimes that's kind of the kick in the pants. They need to start a plan.
New Jersey has some kind of a mandate.
Mm-hmm. Yep, New Jersey, Connecticut, where I am. California was one of the original ones. Oregon, so Illinois. Those were kind of the early adopters, and I consider that to be 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I think you kind of have to separate the two components. So there's the mandate, which requires businesses to have a plan, but then at the same time, the state have also come out with their IRA accounts, and that's what they are. They're not any sort of program or anything. So like we were talking about earlier, the whole financial wellness part of a retirement plan, the whole idea of having access to an advisor and all that kind of stuff, you miss out on that if you just have an account. So a 401k program will have all of these type of options, the group meetings and access to an advisor and all that kind of stuff. The state programs are just simply an account. It's just, everybody at ABC company has a new Roth IRA account, and we're putting in 3%, or the employees are putting in 3%. And if you want to opt out, you opt out. But there's no kind of education around it. There's nothing really around it. So while the account is important to at least establish that part, the whole other financial wellness part is missed. So that's why I say mandate's 2 steps forward, and then you know, the IRA accounts are kind of 1 step backwards. The ideal scenario would just be to have a mandate and not even bother with the state-run IRA programs, because they're just accounts and they end up being really expensive on the employees. But a lot of people feel like they were able to pass the mandate unless they had their own state program. So unfortunately, that's kind of become the model. But there's very rarely a scenario where the state program is in the best interest of the employer or the employees.
All right. So I'm a New York business, but let's say I was in your state, Connecticut, and I get this letter from what do they call it? The comptroller or like who?
Yeah, comptrollers, or sometimes the treasurer, or whoever's running the program. A lot of them have different directors of the program. But yeah, you'll get that letter that'll have a deadline that says, we think you have, based on our information, you have 5 or more employees, and your deadline is December 31st. You can start your own retirement program. Oh, by the way, we're also selling our own IRA solution. Here's where you go to you tell us you have a 401k program. So you just go into their system and say, nope, I'm all set. Or if you don't, you can sign up for the state program.
How easy would it be? I mean, let's say I had 5 employees. How hard or easy would it be for me to go and set up a 401k plan? How much would it cost me? How long would it take? Would I have
Yeah, I
to do
mean,
all that compliance stuff? Like they have to do, what's it called? Like,
the 5,500 and your annual testing and all that kind of stuff. I mean, obviously the short answer is it depends. There's online platforms that say, hey, come to us, you can set up your 401k in 20 minutes. And that's true. You can go through and you can kind of click it like you're buying something on Amazon. And I think for somebody with a little bit of background, they can probably do that. They may not even have to have an advisor in that scenario. They can just go on and do that. So as far as setting up the plan, and then you connect it with your payroll, automatic enrollment, all that kind of stuff. So with a little bit of expertise from the employer. They could probably do it themselves. I generally don't recommend that, but they can do that. As far as costs go, um, it's come down so much, and you've got federal tax credits that can pay for so much of that. As long as you have automatic enrollment, which you'll get a $500 tax credit for that. And then there's other tax credits on top of that. So generally what I see is if you have 20 or fewer employees, it's not going to cost the business anything out of pocket the first 3 years. And that's record keeping, that's administration, and that's your advisor cost. The internal costs of the mutual funds, I mean, they're minimal at this point anyway. You're talking about just a few basis points, and those are always going to be paid for by the employees. The problem with the state programs is what they do is they say, hey, look, we got this great program and it's free to employers. But that just means they dump all the expenses on the employees. So business owners are like, I love the state program because it's free. It's like, well, any program can be free if you make the employees pay for it. So that's kind of the downside of the state programs. In most scenarios, it makes sense for the business owner to pay the expenses because they get the tax credit back. And then they could make a less expensive program for their employees. But again, that's kind of a more advanced conversation. And the states can just knock on the door and say, hey, we've got this great program. It's free. Here, sign up for this as a business owner. And then they sign up and they're not thinking about the employee expenses, and maybe don't care, or maybe don't have the expertise to get in the weeds that much.
Brian, we're going to wrap here. What else would you
Okay.
want to say about this?
Well, I don't really know who your audience is. I know you got a lot of advisors that want to follow you, or that follow you and listen to your stuff. So I would say if you really want to get into the retirement plan business, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, and make sure you're trying to incorporate everybody in that business as part of your financial wellness program. I think it's a great opportunity for advisors to, kind of explore that one-to-many model, and do this across a bunch of different businesses, where like we started off talking about the 8-person bakery, whereas that retirement plan might not be super profitable maybe ever, but if you can get 20 or 30 of those and kind of look at that and say, oh wow, I got 30 plans with 10 people in it, and mentally think of that as maybe one business with 300 employees, and say, okay, now I can kind of talk to them as a group, and cater my messages instead of per business, maybe do it by age group, or kind of group people a different way. I think it can be a good area for for advisors who want to add that to their practice. I do think there is a little bit of a sacrifice that needs to be made from advisors. And I don't think we talk about that enough. I mean, you can manage money and charge 1% or 1.5% and do a couple calls with your clients once every year. When you get in the 401k world, you're probably charging, somewhere between 25 and 50 basis points. And it's probably going to be more work than the individual clients. So there's no question. I think that the 401k world is probably a little bit more work for less money, if we're being honest. So I do think there's a little bit of a sacrifice there, but the idea being you're hopefully going to get a little bit more enjoyment out of it, or it's going to be a little bit more productive for your community if you take that on.
Thank you for making the sacrifice, Brian.
Yeah, sure. No problem.
And I just would say that anything can be made profitable if you have the mindset of wanting it to be successful for you. So if
Yeah,
that's what success looks like to you, if you say to yourself, okay, well, hey, I want to do this and I want to make $1 million a year at being a retirement plan advisor. I think you could do it. And I think it would involve what I kind of talked about, which would be the network effect of, let's say you get those 10 bakeries, Brian. And the next thing you know, these 10 bakeries, you're finding things in common, like that
mhm,
they're all getting gouged when they order flour or something. And so you suggest to them a different way to do things and it saves them money. And then you're asked to speak at the bakery conference.
sure.
And then there's like Dunkin' Donuts CEO is there,
Mhm.
right? Like
Right.
I mean, maybe I just am imagining things, but I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm a business owner. I started a business from nothing when I had two children wrapped around my heels. Now I have four. And I just think this is what it is to be an entrepreneur. It's not just about the dollars. It's not just about the numbers. It's about making things possible that we didn't think were possible. And at the core of it, though, is there could be such a beautiful mission. There could be such a beautiful legacy that you could leave to the world of being a person that walked into a business one day. And when you walked out 5 years later, after them working with you, that was a different company.
Yeah.
That people had a Christmas that wasn't stressful, or that people could get up in the morning feeling as if they were building something by going to work rather than just managing an ends meet, and or that people started to seek financial literacy on their own because you came their way, that they
Mhm.
started to read personal finance blogs and they started to watch YouTube videos and they started to make better decisions and behave better and even to seek better employment for themselves or to seek more success at that company instead of just clocking in and clocking out.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and from an advisor standpoint, I mean, we started talking about the coverage gap and how so many of these small businesses don't have plans. I mean, what if every licensed advisor just took every Friday and said, I'm going to go meet with, 5 businesses or whatever in my community, just as forget of even being profitable, but just said, I'm going to do this Friday afternoons or something like that. Could probably solve the coverage gap within a year if every advisor just took it upon themselves to handle the businesses in a 10-mile radius, So when they talk about the coverage gap or states getting involved, I mean, that's on us as the advisor because we didn't do our job. So um, maybe that's an area where people can kind of focus that instead of, writing a check to your local charity or whatever, donate some time and visit 5 businesses, even if your goal is to just break even on those, maybe that's your donation to the community instead of writing a check, you know?
Well, it's something that's gotten lost. And I mean, I myself am a social media person, but it's about the social part more than the media part.
Sure.
Is that societal aspect of being known in the community, because people want to reciprocate. If you go by and you sit down with someone and you give them 5 good things that they could do, even the business owner alone for their
Mhm.
family, I mean, they have a newsletter. Maybe they're going to give you a week of free advertising in the newsletter. You
Yeah.
never know. It's just, there's so much. And I'm not saying go do nice things for people so that they feel obligated to do something nice back, but
Mhm.
it feels nice to be nice. It feels nice to take actions. And you just never know what you can learn from sitting down with somebody, especially a business owner who's had to slug it out and go out there. And I mean, we know things.
Yeah. Yeah. We know things. We've been through some stuff for sure.
Right. If anything, you might make a new friend. I mean, can't we just all use friends?
Yeah, to a certain extent, I've met my max. I don't need any new friends. Just kidding.
All right. So, Brian, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
um, Brian Williams, everybody. So, how can they? So, you're on LinkedIn, right?
Yep, LinkedIn, NorthshireConsulting.com, or just pick up the phone and give me a call. I'll usually answer.
Okay. And then Brian went to the immersion, and he's coming again this year. So, thank you, Brian, for being part of the
Yeah.
transparency movement. Anybody, if you're interested in the transparency event in March, it's going to be in Kansas City in 2025, and I'll link it below. Come join the flat fee advisors, advice only, the hourly planners, or just folks that in general are championing the cause of financial transparency in their work. We would love to have you join the
Yeah,
immersion.
we had a great time this year, and that's why I'm coming back again. But I don't go to a lot of conferences, if any, just some rare retirement plan stuff locally. So this was the first one that I've actually traveled for in a long time. So I think that says a lot about what you're putting together, and the huge number of repeat people you have coming back, I think says a lot. So you're doing all the right things there.
Amen. Thank you. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.